Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Bob Smith. I am the Deputy Director of Parks and Recreation for the City of Frederick. We are extremely excited about this project. And I guess before we get a little bit too further, we have the ASL interpreters here as well, and then we also have a Spanish interpreter if that is needed. So if it's needed, let us know. So very excited about this project. We've been working on it for a little over 6 months now. Hired our consultant, MHG, back in March of this year. Kicked it off with a community meeting back in April, and I see a lot of familiar faces that were at that community meeting. At that community meeting, the consultant worked to gather ideas, recommendations, and data for the park. The consultant's been working the better part of the past 4 or 5 months, along with city staff, for a concept plan, and that's what the consultant is gonna talk about tonight. I guess also within that concept plan, first and foremost, took into account the community input that was received in April, along with some limitations within the park, topography, ADA accessible access, and some other things like that. But Perry and Dave from MHG are here this evening, our consultants, and they're going to take us through the concept plan that we've come up with for the moment. So with that, I'll turn it over to Perry.
Thank you, Bob, for that lovely introduction. So, my name is Perry Holt-Ronzi. I'm a landscape architect at MHG, which is a engineering, landscape architecture, and land surveying firm in Montgomery Village, Maryland. So, Dave Post in the front row here, and I have been working a lot on the design for Mullinix Park. We are really excited and really honored to be able to get to participate in renovating and in bringing this really incredible historic park up to kind of modern standards, to modern needs, while also honoring the history of the park. We're really excited to show you the design that we've been coming up with, and we'd love to get your feedback and to answer some questions and comments that you have, if any, on the design of the park. And since we don't have too many folks here today, I'd love for this to be more of an interactive presentation. So I'm going to give kind of a walkthrough of our design, and then kind of as we get through each section, if anyone would like to kind of raise their hands, ask any questions or comments, we can just kind of discuss it as we move through it. So without further ado, as most, if not all of you know, we had as Bob mentioned, a design meeting, or community design meeting back in April to kind of discuss what the community wants out of this park, and that we, as designers and in work with the city and with our knowledge of like code and regulation and stuff like that, have kind of developed some design criteria that have influenced the design that we've assembled for you guys today. So just to kind of summarize all of that, in terms of community input, some of the primary points were to honor the history of this park as integral to the history of the African American community in the city of Frederick, as it was this incredibly important park for that community under segregation. Some other important things that were discussed were providing space for events and for programming, adding additional shade, including smaller pavilions for smaller groups of people, adding more seating, reintroducing a bandstand, which was a historical component of the park that's no longer present, adding pollinator gardens and native plants, as well as improving the existing playground and adding more swings. Swings especially were something that were mentioned to us multiple times. In terms of some code requirements and city requirements, just to, again, to summarize, accessibility, ramps for people with disabilities, stormwater management, easiness of maintenance to keep the park in good working condition, as well as things like visibility for safety and policeability, as well as retaining some of the beautiful existing mature trees that have been there for many decades at this point, Additional factors that we wanted to take into account as designers and the engineers that we've been working with have to do with stormwater drainage, surface drainage of water, issues of ecology and sustainability, as well as the addition of creating multiple small gathering spaces throughout the site. So I'm going to walk us through the specific aspects of the design, but here's kind of an overall aerial view. And just to orient you to this view, we have north facing up. At the upper right-hand corner of this image runs Carroll Creek. You can kind of see Diggs Pool in the upper right-hand corner as well. Running along the bottom, the south side of the image is Mullinix Alley, which runs parallel to All Saints Street. And then running along the left side of the image, you can see Bent's Road. Bent's Road, pardon me. And this is just to the south of where we are now. I imagine if you're here or watching this presentation as it's been recorded later, this is just to the south of where we are now. So moving forwards, we're going to start at the west entry to the park, as though we're walking through the park because, you know, a lot of the people who access this park are pedestrians walking through, people from the neighborhood, people visiting the neighborhood. So as we move through this park, these little blue stars on the slides will guide you to kind of show you where we're standing, where we're looking, that sort of thing. So starting at the west entry to the park, looking through the existing historic wrought iron arch and brickwork, you can kind of see some of the accessibility improvements that we've already proposed, such as kind of down to the left, you can see that sloped path arcing downwards towards where the bandstand is. We'll discuss that, as well as the play area, which we'll also discuss. And then creeping up towards the right, you can see ramps with accessible railings towards the pavilion at the top of the hill, which we'll talk about next. So as we kind of walk up that ramp up to the top of the hill, again, that star kind of shows you where we're at in the following images. You can see that we're proposing the smaller pavilion up at the top of the hill, replacing the large existing pavilion that is there. That's going to be removed and replaced with the smaller pavilion, as well as multiple smaller seating areas and a renovated exterior component of the main building, which we'll get to in a moment. So the pavilion here is placed at the top of the crest of the hill, which is the approximate location of the historic bandstand that used to exist in this park but no longer exists. We wanted to kind of honor that as the center, as the peak of the park, although we found what we think is a better, more effective location for the bandstand in conversation with the folks who attended the previous design meeting. So this proposed pavilion is made of metal for durability in colors that coordinate with the existing metal roof of the existing building from the mid-20th century. And it's intended to kind of keep in touch with the kind of more traditional historic styling of the park and the surrounding neighborhoods. You can also see that we've kind of placed this with proximity to some of the play equipment, as well as proximity to accessible parking that we're adding next to the vehicular turnaround in Mullinix Alley on the south side of the park. And that sidewalk off to the right of the image connects to that. Again, really focusing on accessibility and access throughout the whole park. Does anyone have any questions or comments that they'd like to bring up at this point, or shall we continue?
Yeah, I do.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I think, there was a lot of labor currently placed in your designing of your sketches here, but it's obviously that it was done without any input from the black community down there. It's totally, I see it right now as an attempt to whitewash that whole thing from what it was. That's my opinion.
Can you elaborate on, or let me preface what I'm about to say with the fact that we definitely value the input of the Black community, and we definitely we did our best to incorporate the input that was provided at the community meeting, as well as the surveys that were conducted kind of going into the design process. So can you expand on ways that you're seeing that this was whitewashed, or aspects that you think that the Black community would appreciate in the space that we've left out?
A lot of talking, and he's saying that. What you referred to as this steel shelter there, I must have misunderstood you to say that's gonna replace the present bandstand. The shelter that's there right now?
The shelter that's there right now, I refer to that as the pavilion because that's how I've heard other people refer to it, and the city is interested in removing that.
Replace that? Will be replacement for that?
There are other covered seating areas and shaded seating areas throughout the site.
Maybe you should let us go through the rest of the.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah,
I haven't heard you say anything yet.
I want to take my city hat off, put on my
sure, yeah.
So I feel like correct me if I'm wrong, that the picnic tables, the pavilion that was once there, which had a lot more space, was like almost like a monument for like a lot of Black gatherings or cookouts, and like it was like a big, it's just like a signature symbolic place for people to gather together. So I don't know how well that's going to be received, but we haven't seen all the other seating spaces because that was going to be my question. Other spaces or places for people to grill.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, perhaps it would be better for us to kind of keep moving forward so we can kind of talk about the design more holistically and make sure we're meeting the needs of the people of the neighborhood. Was there one more question over here?
Yes, I personally think that could be like 3 times as big as it's shown.
Again, we've got a lot more space than other parts of the park, so we'll.
Than just 6 people sitting at one table. In fact, there's no table. There's really open space for something to go on, and it's usually elevated. That's my
No, I was saying
image of a bandstand. If this is a bandstand.
it's not. This is the location of the historic bandstand, and we've proposed a bandstand to kind of serve a similar purpose.
Bandstand later on.
Yes, that's what I said.
The only comment I have, and I'm one of the ones who suggested smaller, family-friendly style pavilions. My image of those was just like you see all over the place, like down by, the Fleming Avenue swimming pool, Thomas Pool. They have a cover, they seat a table of 6 to maybe the end being a handicap space. And some of the space, picnic pavilions I'm seeing kind of in the back of that, behind the tree, don't have a cover. And that, is not what I personally envision. It's got the table, it's got the grill, but it doesn't have a cover. You drive around Frederick, to the entrance of Frederick High School, and you'll see a group of about 6 or 8 of them right off to your right in the little triangular shaped part of Baker Park. They're all over the place. There's 8 of them or so down by East Stadium, Harry Grove Stadium. So I'll wait to see the larger bandstand, but I think pavilions should be. And what's the little, looks like a jungle gym thing behind that? It's a black lattice of metal.
Yeah, I was saying we're kind of providing some play equipment, like some climbing equipment, essentially for kids. We've got some other play equipment that we'll discuss as we move forward. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So, moving forward as we kind of walk further east through the site, looking kind of southeast downhill along this slope here down the hill. We're kind of, stepping forward a couple paces. You can see that kind of jungle gym in the foreground just to kind of orient yourself relative to that previous image that we showed. So, so again, one of the big focuses here is meeting accessibility requirements, providing these ramps to access bathrooms, which will be in this renovated main building at the center of the site, which again we'll discuss in a minute as we continue our walk through the site. We've also, in this part of the site, especially included a lot of like open space for people to just kind of use however they please. We've preserved that aspect of the existing layout of the park. And then if we kind of follow that walk along that curving ramp at the south end of the site towards the existing building, which will undergo significant renovations to better kind of serve the current uses of the site. You can see along that path that there's one of those smaller seating areas with some shade provided, preserving those existing trees, with accessible picnic tables and grills for the use of the public. So moving forward. So this is a render of the proposed renovations to the building that was provided by the architect whom we've been working with. So just to kind of summarize the changes that we're proposing to this building, essentially keeping as much of the structure as of the building in place as possible while converting largely underused storage area to usable outdoor covered space. So this is what we're proposing at the center of the park, really at the heart of the park, to replace that use of the existing large wooden structure at the top of the hill for those large family gatherings, large social gatherings with grilling and shade. We're also included, you can, the screens are so far away from you guys, so hopefully you can see, along the, the pointers don't work on the screens, unfortunately, so I can't point. I was expecting to be able to point, but unfortunately I cannot. So I'm also trying to verbalize specifically where things are for the sake of people who aren't here and couldn't see me if I just walked up to the screen and pointed. So let's see. So the existing, or sorry, excuse me, the remaining enclosed portion of the building consists of 2 bathrooms, which will be, the interiors of which will receive new fixtures, new finishings, new lighting, that sort of thing, which will be accessible to the public during open hours of the park and maintained on a daily basis by city maintenance. So, and then between those 2 bathrooms will also be maintained a smaller storage area for equipment that's used for the park and used by the city. And, members of the public who have access to the current storage facility. And then along that wall, kind of facing us, is some additional kind of buffet area. Again, just to kind of add some furnishing in addition to all of these picnic tables to kind of enable, again, those public gatherings. So yeah, so again, we're kind of, here we go, moving forward. This is kind of looking from the inside of the pavilion out towards the existing basketball court. So some of the concerns with the existing basketball court were that there weren't really any places to sit, that the lighting doesn't work, that people play out there in the dark. And so kind of our priorities for that area of the site is we're working with an electrical engineer to repair and replace existing lighting fixtures, ideally putting those on a timer so people who want to play in the dark, need to only have time to play after dark, that sort of thing, will be able to. As well as providing a little seating area with some, places for people to drop their stuff, trash cans, that sort of thing, to just make that area a little easier for people to use. And again, working on connecting that to the alley, working on connecting that to the rest of the site with these paths to provide that accessibility and just kind of make it easier to get from place to place within the park. And then from here, we're going to move kind of north along the paths towards this proposed sloped lawn and the bandstand at the base of the lawn. So we envision this lawn as kind of having a multifunctional purpose, both as unprogrammed space for people to run around, play sports, throw a ball, whatever they like, but more importantly, as a sloped kind of amphitheater-like lawn to have as seating for events that might take place at this stage, this bandstand that we're including at the bottom of the hill towards the Carroll Creek entry to the park. And we'll zoom on that in a moment, but you can kind of see it at that circular element behind the people shown at the back right hand of this image. So this is a kind of zooming in. So this is one of the places that we want to most explicitly draw attention to the history of the park and to the people who contributed to the construction of the park, especially the early history of the park and the early programming and use of the park. So, for example, some of, excuse me. So, so we have this kind of circular stage area that's sized to be big enough for small bands of maybe 4 to 5 people comfortably with, significant equipment, or, potentially larger groups of people if they want to fit. It's about 16 feet in diameter. We've included this sort of decorative railing element at the back of the bandstand, providing this backdrop, sort of representing the past and the history behind the people who are taking center stage, as kind of, adopting the ongoing present day history, the future history of the site. So this railing is made up of vertical metal elements that are kind of reference abstractly some kind of the historical metal, wrought iron, physical elements of the site, but are also engraved with the names of people who significantly contributed to the history of the site. So, for example, on here, we have Holmes Davenport Baker and Benjamin and Bertha Murphy, excuse me, who are 2 of the 26 groups of families and individuals who, 28 total, who contributed either selling parts or the entirety of their, personal land to create the construction of the park, or who donated land or money in order to enable the construction of this park for the Black community in the 1920s. And then we also have some other names on here of people who contributed to the early history of the park, such as Bill Lee Jr., who was a local historian, a local educator, who was really integral to youth sports programs and youth programming at the park in the middle and late 20th century. So that's just kind of an example, just kind of some names. Let me see if I'm forgetting anything. Here's just kind of another view of that bandstand from the other angle, kind of putting it in the context of the entry to the park. We definitely intend to include electrical outlets, electrical hookups, around the bandstand to provide for things like speakers, amps, that sort of thing, or any sort of other equipment that's necessary for the kind of programming and events that people want to put on. I'm going to hop back for a second because in this image you can also see that, because this is at the bottom of the hill, the kind of lowest end of the site where all of the water is going to flow downhill, the bandstand is also surrounded by these rain gardens to manage stormwater, which we really want to include as kind of decorative flowering elements with those native plants, to provide something aesthetic and aesthetically pleasing, as well as to manage those stormwater management requirements. And then kind of if we walk a little further towards the northeast, excuse me, we will kind of see how this park looks from that entry from the creek side. Again, with that existing wrought iron arch over the existing brick columns, you can see that we've really tried to place this bandstand combined with this kind of piece referencing explicitly the history of the park as something that's really framed at this entry to the site, as something that's intended to be eye-catching and to draw people into the park. We're going to light this up at night so that those names are visible at night, and so that people walking along the park at night can come and, you know, see that there's this element honoring the history of the park, in addition to the existing plaques referring to the history of the park and people involved in its construction, maintenance, and ongoing use throughout the last 100 years. So, so zooming out again, as we kind of follow the ramps up the path back towards the west end of the site. Again, you can see that blue star is like, that's kind of the area we're looking at. We're going to discuss some of the play elements to incorporate, to kind of replace the existing play elements that are out there, some of which don't seem, based on our surveys and based on our observations of visiting the site, don't seem to see a lot of use. So, so this is an example of some of the equipment that we want to include, some more sensory musical instruments. This particular set of chimes, for example, is a really lovely set from a company called Percussion Play. They're a high quality, well-tuned, full octave C scale of chimes, so that people, not just children, I've seen all sorts of adults, teenagers, people of all ages who enjoy these auditory elements and be able to make a little bit of music on the site, especially, again, because people playing music was a big part of the history of the site, and we want to include that in a playful way, in addition to providing a space for people to perform music and enjoy music together in a more formalized way. So, this view kind of looks up, you can kind of see that, again, just to orient you a little bit, on the right side of the image, you can kind of see those chimes that we were just looking at, kind of in the background on the right of the image. But this is looking up towards the swings and then up towards that small pavilion at the top of the hill, as well as that large existing rock formation that sticks out of the bedrock of the hill. So, like I said, just wanted to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. So like I said before, including swings on the site was definitely something that was highly requested as a main part of the playground of the site. And so we've kind of incorporated these into the steep slopes of the existing site by adding these retaining walls and these kind of big stadium-style stair steps that both help people access the swings, but also provide some informal seating, both for people just kind of hanging out in this area, and also for people to look down towards the bandstand, because backing up to this image kind of overall of the site, you can see, I wish I had a pointer right now, that kind of dark brown area at the top center of the site has the swings, and then the swings are oriented downhill towards the bandstand, and those steps, going back to this image, those steps are oriented towards that bandstand, so that provides a little bit of additional seating in addition to the lawn area. And then zooming out to more of a bird's eye view of kind of this part of the site, again, you can see those existing rocks, those swings we just talked about, and some connecting stairs between those swings and that climber we talked about at the kind of crest of the hill next to that pavilion. So we've kind of spreaded these elements out a little through the site, largely, but not as a result of constraints having to do with the steep slopes on this site and the necessity of providing accessible paths between areas of different elevations. And so zooming out even more again to look at this kind of whole site, excuse me. Some additional things that have been taken into account throughout the site are really incorporating native plants, pollinator-friendly plants in those areas like the stormwater management rain gardens, as well as retaining as many of these beautiful existing trees as possible. Because those really contribute to the historic character of the site in largely the same way that the historic buildings surrounding it do. And we really want to protect that aspect of the site and honor it as well. So, thus concludes our preliminary, I suppose, walkthrough of the site today. So I think at this point, hopefully you guys have a better kind of overall understanding of what we're proposing for the site. And I would like to open the floor for any questions, comments, feedback, additional concerns that you all might have.
I'm saying it looks like almost a wooden fence on the south boundary. Is that a fence? I'm seeing what looks like a wooden fence at the very back, the south boundary near the,
Yeah, that's the
that's-
approximate
that's-
location
thank you.
of the, existing private fences on private property. Just kind of as like a reference point.
That's private, and that you're not doing anything to, in fact, there is a fence that separates the park from the alley.
That's
and
true. I
that
suppose I did not mention that.
Goes away.
Yeah, we're intending to remove that to kind of open up the way that space feels a little bit. But we're not making any changes to the alley itself. Our scope is focused on just specifically like the property boundary of the park, and the alley is a separate property, as well as the connection to Bent's Road and some kind of parts to the north of the site as well that are planted.
You saying that you're viewing the alleyway as separate from the park.
It is separate from the park in
But,
a legal sense,
let me
and
correct
we
you. Let me
as
correct you, because
designers don't
our
have.
organization has a copy of the deed, and those people that originally planned for the park included public access, which that road represents right now as public access, and right now that public has been denied access to the use of that park via that alleyway, that road.
That is true of the original deeds, but at present, that public right-of-way is not within, it is unfortunately outside the area that we as designers have influence over. I would be, I'm sorry,
Maybe
well, that's some feedback.
maybe we can provide a little bit of explanation. The alley is still a public alley, and so
But the
you
public
can still
public
drive,
cannot use it.
but you can still drive up the alley.
You cannot drive out of that alley.
Well, that's what the turnaround is for.
No, that turnaround was never there. That turnaround
Okay,
was placed there.
that's what's there now, though, so,
Okay.
so,
Well, go ahead.
yeah.
If I could just that area is outside of the scope of what they've designed. It's part of the park and it's still there, yes, but it's outside of their scope of what they've designed.
So after the park is designed and these elements are implemented, there's still an opportunity to open that area for public access?
Additional conversations is not part of this project.
Gotcha.
Well, I would say one thing, site visibility in that alley, trying to get in and out is horrible. Oops, sorry.
There you go, you can hold it.
The site visibility coming in and out of that alley is horrible. I would not recommend trying to get a lot of traffic back there. I live there, and it's dangerous getting out each and every day. So to open that up to more people would be dangerous.
And there used to be a light there to help,
Well, that maybe would help, but right now, if
No,
you
there
try to
wasn't
come
a-
out of there, you're like,
or
There
You're
wasn't
gonna
a-
not a light, what
Yeah,
was it?
well, thanks to your city leaders, that they were responsible for that. They were responsible for that, saying that the reason that park was, first of all, a telephone pole was put in the middle of that park to prevent any, and in the middle of that road, to prevent any traffic to be able to use that that was done by the so-called city leaders. They did that with under the mistaken understanding that they were stopping drug trafficking. They should have put one in the middle of the airport, Frederick Airport, if they wanted to do that. But I want to comment to Bob. I think this whole venture right here, as it was shown to us, is an exercise in futility because the Frederick community that used that park, has been using that park, has outgrown the limited spaces that are available to them right now. They only started out with less than 10 acres. As you got these drawings up here, these pictures up here. It would give somebody the impression that you're dealing with a place that has 40 or 50 acres. Let's talk. We're talking about trying to put a park in there for a handful of people. But the population in that area, in all of Frederick, has grown. It has drastically outgrown the capacity of the park as it stands right now. The organization that's responsible for this meeting right here, you see 3 of the members right here. We're the ones that went to City Hall and told them that we wanted the return of our park, which included, I didn't hear any discussion of it. Our park at the time included everything you're showing up at right now. But one thing you guys failed to mention, and you didn't mention in the original meeting, is Diggs Pool, which was the backbone and the heart of that pool, of that park. And we're asking that pool be returned to its original status. You guys figure out how to do it, come up with the money for it, because it was your choice to remove that swimming pool. No, you didn't ask us what to do with the pool. The city never, there was never any problems with the pool.
So I would have to defer to Bob or another representative of the city on that. Again, I'm sorry, that's just outside the scope of what we were hired to do. I can't speak to that.
So let me ask this question, and this is your answer will determine how much we will continue to pursue what we're talking about tonight. Are these final plans, or are these just still part of the preliminary stage?
This is still kind of an ongoing design process. Okay. We're hoping that we've presented a design that's, meets most of the needs and requests that people have brought up, but we're having this meeting because we want feedback, and because if there are changes that need to be made to this design, we want to be able to make those changes.
Okay, so from my understanding, through casual conversation, particularly one of the older persons that serves on the board right now, there was one meeting that was held at the Frederick Elks on West All Saint Street. Is that correct?
At where? Sorry.
Frederick Elks on West All
I'm
Saint.
not familiar with that.
Is anybody familiar
Our
with that?
company was not, as the consultants were not involved in that.
Had as part of this project with this consultant group was the meeting that you took.
Okay, because this is what I'm proposing with the city of Frederick, and maybe Shannon can help facilitate this, because we're trying to get more of our community to be representatives of this meeting. And if we can have it in a place where we normally frequent, maybe we can, because I'm quite sure that you would get just as much of a pushback from my brother here, Y2. You would probably get the same sentiments from a larger audience within the community. Right now our voices are being censored because they're not seeing here, they're not being at these meetings, and they're not seeing these designs. From what I can see, there is a lot of questions about the designs that you have now, and with further input from our community, we can probably meet somewhere in the middle within an agreed plan. But until we can meet in the community, where more of our people are there to witness your presentation, right now it's just a moot point. So who can we have a conversation about to get that meeting scheduled in the actual black community?
think Dave has some thoughts on that. I'll step aside.
Hi, I'm Dave Post with MHG. I'll get you in a second.
Oh, yeah, he was
So,
first, though.
First of all, I understand there's a lot of historical, political issues involving this area and the park. Our task was not involved in trying to deal with those specifically. What we're tasked to do is to come up with a renovation for the park that meets the communities and the city's needs and desires. So that's what we're presenting today. If you have some specific thoughts about the design, we would love that feedback. So, like, for example, I heard, well, there's only one small pavilion. Maybe we need 2 or 3 small pavilions.
Well,
That's specific feedback that we can.
Let me just,
that
I
we
mean,
can
I
address.
understand what you're saying, and I understand that your company, or you are consultants, and you're working on the behalf of the community itself. So, you know, your role and your position is limited in how much you can discuss and how much authority you have in making these plans and making these changes. The ultimate decision is going to be made by the city of Frederick and with the input of the community. So I understand what you all's position are. I am proposing this to the city of Frederick, the recreation, Parks and Recreation, that we need to have a meeting in the black community where we have visibility so that we can see this presentation and have a valid input based upon what historical significance and historical understanding that our community has.
Yes, because that park as it stands right now, and having you guys void of the historical position and the historical makeup of that park, I think, you know, you guys were put in a piss poor position. I don't think the city's dealing fair with you guys. I don't think they were being honest with you guys. Just like this meeting tonight, it's indicating that.
So I think the question for you is, what about the park is it that you don't want to change, or that you want to be done differently than what we're showing you?
I want the park to serve those people that it
We're trying to
historically
serve the
designed to do that.
people. I think you're not giving us
Yeah,
enough
the
information for us to make a
example.
better decision than what we're showing you.
I'm giving
So-
you the information at a previous meeting. I gave, when she said.
We took a lot of information at that
I mean,
meeting, so.
just for instance, when she commented on the why the present basketball court was unsuitable. It didn't have a damn thing to do with the lighting there, because they always had time lighting there. You could go in there and set the lighting up.
It is currently broken, is my
Oh, okay,
understanding.
well, you know-
That's all that I meant, is that
Okay,
it's
well, that
currently
take-
broken.
To fix that don't take, have to redesign the damn basketball court.
We're not redesigning the basketball court. We're putting new lights at the basketball court.
Okay, well, it doesn't really require new lights, it requires maybe a fuse, and that would, take that out of this discussion. That basketball court is pretty much a sedimentary feature of it. You can't easily move it like you move the trees around.
We're not moving the trees or that, so.
Yeah, if I could kind of maybe go back to the process and where we're at and what we're doing. So we brought MHG on, they were given an area for their scope of work. We had the community meeting, we've worked, now we're back at another community meeting presenting the concept plan. This is not a final plan. If there are further discussions that need to happen, the city can facilitate those discussions.
Well, that's what we're asking.
Right, sure, absolutely, right. I believe what maybe Dave and Perry are asking tonight, if there are specific recommendations that we can take from this meeting. Yes, I like that, no, I don't like that. I think that, you know, that's the premise of this meeting, to gather some of that input as we continue the design of this park. This is not a final design.
Understood. And one of the things that we did point out in the beginning of the meeting that we had in April, I didn't know it was April, I thought it was in March, or maybe it wasn't, was the construction of that eyesore in the middle of the park that right now houses the bathrooms and there's a storage facility. We were requesting to completely have that removed and relocated. Not to have that stay there, and because it's, you know, it takes away from the space, the limited space that there is. If it can be relocated to a place where, it's not taking up so much of a space in the center of the park, that right there is a start of that plan, of that design.
And people made suggestions as to where it should go. What I see is it stayed right there in the center of the park.
So I completely agree. To be perfectly honest, I agree that it's a bit of an ugly old building that's smack in the middle of the park that interrupts, this sight lines, lovely like lawn, trees, all that sort of thing. Unfortunately, it is not in the budget to build a whole nother building. There is simply not enough funding to build another building. And so we've tried to open up the sight lines by kind of opening this up into a new pavilion space, to reduce the size of the enclosed space, but there is not a budget for a new
So it
building.
comes down again to where the black community gets neglected because of a budget.
A budget issue.
I wish there were more money.
Yeah, there's gonna have to be a whole lot more money, because that damn park, what you guys have envisioned for it right now, is far out of my realm of what the park should be, because that swimming pool is changed over. That park will never be representative of the black community, which we represent. That's what this organization represents.
And again, I'm sorry, but the swimming pool and the building associated with it, that whole area is just not something that we have been hired to touch. So that's a conversation that you'll have to have with the city.
Your bosses, the city at this point, they the ones took it upon themselves to rip it out at their expense, so they're gonna have to replace it at their expense. And have them a part of this discussion.
Okay, well, we're not gonna fix the pool tonight, and you had a question, like,
Yeah,
your
he
hand
was
was up
before me,
years
though.
ago.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, Keith. You don't represent.
Only the one concern that stood out to me is because of the deep history of the park and the community. I see that you guys did use the metal bars that are coming up from the bandstand to represent like some of that history. But just as feedback going forward, and maybe you guys could just incorporate a little bit more history that's more pronounced, I would say, into the park, that makes it more significant that this was the only park in Frederick that African descendants were able to enjoy, and this was a prominent neighborhood that African descendants were able to use. So I think that that's something that's significant to the park, and I'd like to see just more of that history, because it is something very significant to the city and to the community. So I'd like to see more of that.
And make it correct.
Yeah, that
As
makes.
you had it up here, there was nothing on there that was true, as at best I could read.
I mean, those particular names that I gave were examples from historical documents, but then perhaps the documents that I.
And before you, if I could jump in there, Greg, and we talked about this during some of the design, particularly of that particular feature, that would be a much larger community endeavor where we did involve community groups for that information.
Yeah, and we definitely, like, I focused on like, kind of giving the example of those names, but we
Absolutely, go on that would be part of the final.
yeah, like the kind of like text that we would include. Yeah, that's definitely. Yeah, it's kind of like a draft, like a kind of like an initial concept that we're kind of presenting, that like what information, like that's the broader conversation of what information do you think is missing, and you've definitely given some good examples of that, and that's really helpful. Yeah, like Bob was saying, an ongoing discussion of who to include and what to include.
Come up there with. They don't impress me at all. I'm not impressed by that. I'm gonna tell you, I'm not impressed by it at all. Matter of fact, I think it's lousy. But it's not within the vision that we share it with the various groups that the various tables that were set up to take on the opinions of the community.
I think for the sake of time, we should focus. Sorry about that. That was loud. Focus on feedback for now. And Watu, Bob, Malik, Keela, we're gonna have a meeting outside of this. And I know someone else had their hand up. We're just coming up on time, so we want to make sure.
Let us know. Keep the community informed when that meeting is going to take place.
Just like I called you and I sent you a calendar invite, absolutely.
But how many times did I call you inquiring about that?
Right. And I took the time to call you and I sent you a calendar invite.
And
But
I called you about
yes,
15 times.
we will definitely touch base outside of this meeting.
I got the final results.
I wanted to, I know someone else had their hand up, but really quick. Did you have your hand up over there, sir?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I'll go down to the things that I've written down.
Mm-hmm.
The current pavilion is too big, but we do have occasionally, like large events, like the National Night Out for the police. And that could be there, or they could bring another tent in or something. But if the large pavilion is to go, and there's be 4 or 5 smaller pavilions spaced around, I think they should be covered, you know, just like the ones I kind of alluded to. You know, they can be more contemporary in design. They're old and wooden, like the city's done for years. The other thing is honoring the community leaders. That's great. I heard something about plaques as well as the slats of the backdrop of the thing, and if that is sprinkled around, those would be good. And I just saw 2 names on that. Holmes Baker, who, you know, was one of the people who gave the land, and then Bill Lee, who. Okay. I'm not a fan of the chimes. I think that might be a little bit. I hate to put things or not put things in just because they'll be misused, but I think they could be misused.
So just to touch on that real quick. So like that was definitely kind of like potentially like a noise nuisance is something that we definitely want to prevent. So we've kind of tried to keep that in a part of the site that's farther away from the residences. It's kind of surrounded by, you know, there's like some plants to kind of
Right.
dampen the sound a little bit. We've
I can give you the name of 2 neighbors who live in the back part of those houses that come off of Bent Street, you know, and you can check with them to see if they would enjoy it. But Ingrid, I know, has
people are gonna
young
make
young
noise,
kids.
no
All right,
matter what.
Let me continue. There has been a fence along the, I guess it's the north side of the alley, which isn't in your scope, that has separated from people from just driving off the alley and parking perpendicular parking in the grass. That will happen, and if it stays exactly like that,
Historically, that's never happened. That's never been the case, Jim. Never been the case. If you lived in that area,
but there's a fence that keeps it from happening. But it would happen, I believe, if it was simply like that. So I would suggest some sort of.
the fence up there, the police did it.
You're going by belief. We're going by historical references. That was never a case as long as we lived in that area. No one disrespected the property like that.
Okay, all right.
People drive up there now. They
Yeah.
drive up the path and they park there and they play basketball, they double park.
Okay, that's fine.
So they do park there.
As a
Right.
result of not having the ability to exit completely out of the park.
Or not having parking, which is a good thing to have,
Oh,
because
yeah,
there is
yeah.
no parking.
Right.
I mean,
Well,
people come all the time and they don't know where to park, so
Yeah.
I think it's great to have some parking.
Because it's the what do they call it now? The immigrants that came in and moved where you living right now. Only thing, if you look east, look south in the park, only thing you see, no parking out for them. It used to be a community there. That kind of stuff never existed.
okay. If I can continue.
Yeah, of
I
course.
see
I just want to acknowledge real quick that that's definitely something we can take. We can
Well,
kind of like take
a
another look at that,
hedge
and yeah,
or-
that wasn't something
or
we
cobblestones or
considered
something
as
like
a
that.
function
if
of the
Watu
existing
tells me that it
fence.
never happened before, I'll take his word. The 3 parking spaces that I see right there where
there is a fence around the cul-de-sac as well. I've never known really why that cul-de-sac is so big. It's, Hammerhead would, I think, be just as good, but it wasn't in your scope. But it's something Bob can have his traffic engineers or somebody look at.
That's a good
And
question.
the concept of going through the alley that Watu says, the city fathers did, that was, I think, a decision of one administration, and another administration can undo another administration's.
Jim Grimes,
I yes, Watu, I know. The turning the existing storage building into a little mini pavilion, I like. I guess it's a question of whether it has fixed tables or removable tables. That's a big thing with the existing pavilion. There are fixed tables, you can't move them, so it's not
Right.
flexible space. You couldn't have a little square dance or something there, if you
Right.
wanted to.
So
Those things
just-
that look like pieces of salami that are around. The one at the corner of the basketball court, I think, serves no function at all. It's, if it's going to be a little private seating area where people would want to enjoy a picnic or something like that.
I mean, it's for people using the basketball court, people sitting down, taking a break.
Okay.
Yeah, watching.
All
the game,
right.
exactly.
All right. Okay. I'll.
basketball, you wouldn't have a table like that in that area.
All right.
It becomes a hazard.
All right. There's one right by the lamppost where the sidewalk comes off the alley. It's uncovered. It used to have a grill, but the grill got taken away recently. And I guess my final question is: I like the bandstand where it is, even though it does kind of have its back on the second entrance, the Carroll Creek Park entrance, which, by the way, a group I'm involved with, Friends of Mullinix Park, provided to the city that arched wrought iron
I
thing.
remember you
There
mentioned
are
that
more
last week.
groups than the one that's been vocal here tonight that are interested in this park, and that is Friends of Mullinix Park, which is a recognized Friends group, recognized by the city. And we do, I'm the only representative here tonight, but it will be discussed at our next meeting. And
Jim, you're not the only ones here. I'm here.
yes, you are. I'm sorry, Mike. Watu, you are. And the swings, I don't know. We have a kind of a roundabout thing. It's not a merry-go-round, but a little twisty thing. There's other kiddie play equipment that is going away, and swings are coming back. And I don't know if that's going to be controversial or not. And those are my comments.
Thank you for that input. That's definitely helpful to have those kinds of concrete things. We're taking some notes on that. Thank you. Yeah, go
I have
ahead.
a question. I know that you said that the center, pavilion there, it's not in your scope of work, but you are able to redesign it and make an open sight line, maybe add you're able to take it down, build bathrooms, and kind of build it back up?
So here, I'm gonna kind of back up to the image of that just so I can kind of point a little more specifically. So I guess I'll just take this with me. Hopefully that won't cause horrible feedback. Let's see. Okay, yeah. So this structure of the roof that we're showing here, that's the existing roof of the building. And these walls here on this side, the one opposite to that, the one on the wall kind of facing the back of this photo, that's an existing structural wall. We're trying to keep as much of those existing walls, structure, and roof as we can in order to keep down the costs of this so that we can do things like, provide extensive regrading and paths to meet accessibility requirements, significant piping and things like that to meet stormwater management requirements, to repair some of the lighting, which was something that was specifically requested at the community meeting. Anyway, sorry. I just wanted to address that since,
Thank
but yeah, so essentially we're trying to keep as much of the existing building possible for budget reasons, but change it in such a way that it kind of meets those things that people requested, like not having it block all the sight lines and serve as that kind of bigger pavilion space for kind of medium to large groups of people. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Because I was thinking, like, in this whole design here, maybe to clear some more sightline, if it's in the scope of work, maybe the bathroom, does the bathroom have to be positioned on that end because of plumbing?
Yeah, that's the location of the existing bathroom.
I'm just trying to think of ways that it can be maybe reconfigured. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, they
But
have
I guess
porta-
it can't be
They
really
have
changed.
porta potties, they can, yeah, I mean, in the midst of the public having events down there, people don't like to be watched going in and out of the restrooms and all.
Yeah, I do think that.
A little more privacy than to say that this existing thing right now is still gonna function as a restroom.
And maybe when you go back, like, I think this is good feedback when you go back to the drawing board, perhaps, if you can, if taking the bathrooms out of there is an option and putting something, maybe it's less expensive and it's in your scope of work, a bathroom maybe closer to, like, the fence area that it's not, like, directly in the park where.
That was something that we looked into, and again, it's really the budget that is the constraint. Unfortunately, like I said, I wish we had 3 times as much money for this.
Yeah, I understand, because it would be nice if you could just see everywhere. Then, especially as a parent, you would want to, like, be able to see, like, you know, in the park and just have a sight line on where your kids are. You know, kids don't just stay
For sure.
in one
Yeah.
space in the park. You just, if you're in there enjoying, you know, a conversation with a friend or family, if you had a good sight line where your child is.
Definitely agree. And like that's one of the reasons why we wanted to provide a lot of seating throughout the park and provide kind of multiple like benches and grills and stuff like that throughout the park, is so that kind of, yeah, like people who can kind of like move around if they need to, or like sit wherever they need to keep an eye on like their kids or, you know, any people that they're caretaking, that sort of thing.
So Walker, would it be feasible to just nix that whole plan and just if it's a budget issue, just nix the whole idea of trying to renovate that shelter and just use porta potties? And they got porta potties all over Baker's Park. And that would give the land back. That would remove the poor sight line, right?
That's true.
And that also will give more funding back to allocate to some other project in the park, because to be honest with you, I'm not in favor of that little small grandstand that's there. There's no roof, for protection of hot days when a band is playing, they got the sun beaming down on them.
Okay.
So there needs to be, if you're having somebody who's entertaining, they need to have protection, they need to have a roof or something, some kind of shelter over top of them while they're performing. That was the whole idea of us hoping that, or not hoping, but asking that we can have something like that, that not necessarily, is, on the same level as what they have at the amphitheater in Baker's Park. We know we're not gonna, you know, we're not favorable like that anyway, we know. But at least have something that kind of represents, that shows the community that we're putting something together that is reflective of the respect that we have for the park.
Yeah,
And to
that makes a lot
maintain-
of sense to, yeah, to provide that cover, to kind of, as part of the function of that stage, that bandstand, and yeah, to make it a little more formal, more, yeah, like that focus.
Historically
That makes a lot of
correct.
sense.
Maintaining the historical character of the whole park, that if you did that, then you would know that little circle there, that little shower station, would not historically meet the needs of the community. Because when we do have events down there, we generally have church choirs down there, which usually they constitute more than 5 or 6 people.
So what kind of numbers do we need to accommodate?
We were talking about having that bandstand down there, what would we call it? Amphitheater, yeah. At least 15,
Okay.
yeah. at
Yeah,
least
we can look
15
into,
plus
we
that.
can definitely look into kind of adjusting the size, the like coverage, that sort of thing. This is really helpful, like concrete feedback, and I appreciate this. I just want to say that.
I agree with the idea of cover for the organization I work for does a lot of events at the amphitheater, and you just never know when there's going to be a little bit of rain, and that just protect the equipment and things like
that makes
very
sense.
helpful to have cover, and it's even more helpful that the cover is always there as opposed to something you have to pay for each time you have that activity. And while I have the floor, I was just gonna ask one other kind of, in this image you see it, but you see the rails on the walkway that's coming down to
Mm-hmm.
the pavilion, and assuming that the pavilion stays, or what do we call this one, the revamped bathroom area. The basketball court's up top, you have some other things up top, and it just seems a shame that rail is in the middle of that park space. In my imagination, like when you have the aerial view, the kids would run back and forth from the basketball court to the jungle gym climbing thingy, whatever that was, and those are in the way. I understand that there's a slope requirement, you're required to have a thing, but in that particular space, since it's kind of cutting through the middle of the park, it's
Mhm.
great if you could figure out some solutions that allow for people to get from, whatever this is called,
Yeah.
to the higher level without that having to have that, the rails there, so that space is open so people can run around and not have to be impeded by the rail.
That's a good point. That makes a lot of
Is that
sense.
there for ADA reasons?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, if it's a certain slope, it's too dangerous, so you have to have the rail, so I understand why. you
Yeah,
did
we
it.
can definitely make some adjustments to that. We
In that
can,
spot.
yeah.
There's another place where you have it and you're kind of at the edge of the park, it's not such a big deal, but this is kind of the center, and I can just see people running, from here to there. And
Yeah.
we
in
don't
a way.
disagree with you.
That's a good point.
We looked at, it was just hard to get enough length.
I'm sure,
to avoid the-
I know it's a challenging site, but in that big open space, it'd just be nice if you could traverse the whole park without having to duck. I mean, if I were a kid, I'd just duck under, but. Not a kid anymore.
You can't just vault over it.
The overall view with the
Sure.
back kind of happened that way?
Yeah. So yeah, we're just yeah, that area that we were referring to is right here, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. And yeah, you can definitely see that. Yeah, if you're running from here to here, it does get cut off. That's a good point.
I'm curious.
Yeah, go for it.
When you guys were doing your drawings, did you have any idea as you were placing various items in the park, how much area you were dealing with, space?
Oh gosh, I mean, off the top of my head, I don't remember the exact square footage. I want to say that our area of disturbance, like the area that is just under an acre, so it was about 39,000 square feet. I don't remember the total area of the whole park, but it is between 1 and 2 acres.
Yeah, the park was surveyed and there were multiple site visits.
Yeah, I just don't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head. Was there a concern there, or I don't follow your logic? I'm sorry.
Yeah, because that park, when it was inhabited, when people lived there, the mayor went around and asked each person if they would donate X number of acres to comprise the park. And there were, I think, I don't know exactly right now, but there were 15 families that volunteered to give land. And that's more than any 1 acre.
I mean, again, we're not that 39,000 square feet number isn't the whole site. That's just kind of the square footage of the area that we're making changes to, if that makes sense. So the whole site, the whole property, I should say, the legal delineations is I think about 2 acres, including the pool, including some areas for example, where there are big mature trees that we're not touching. The whole legally delineated site I think is about 2 acres. And then I guess there's the additional square footage of what's now the alley, which I assume was part of that donated land. That's my understanding. But yeah, so.
Getting back to parking, you don't show it, but on the other side of the Diggs Pool House, there are about 8 or 10 perpendicular pull-in parking spaces in front of a serpentine brick wall. That is in Mullinix Park. Mullinix Park doesn't get credit for it. It's signed, Diggs Pool, you can't park here unless you're in Diggs Pool. Well, Diggs Pool is not Mullinix Park, at least according to you, it's not in your scope. I think, I think that it should be signed for use of Mullinix Park, because right now people go into the courthouse or wherever, use it. I know residents use it too, but it's in Mullinix Park. This plan doesn't show anything on the other side of Diggs Pool, pool house. Doesn't show that serpentine wall, doesn't show the historic flood marker, the flood water got this high in 1976. All that's part of Mullinix Park.
Down the Court Street, correct.
That's true. Yeah, that's totally
So
true.
I'm not seeing any of it here.
We just wanted to focus on like the area that changes are being made to. But I mean, if that's a change
Well,
that
the
especially your
change is
organization,
to
that people in the neighborhood
dedicate
care
that
about,
parking-
yeah,
the change is to
we
dedicate that
can-
parking to Mullinix Park.
we can definitely have a conversation with the
Bob
city
and,
about that.
Steve Johnson can kick their shins and fight that one out if they want.
Yeah, we can definitely have that conversation. I'm not sure how difficult that would be, to be perfectly honest, but that's a conversation that we can have again, since, yeah, that is within the bounds of the park, for sure. Was there anything else? Any other questions? Anything else anyone wanted to bring up? Yeah.
So there is the parking lot that's right here, and there's a bridge that goes across Carroll Creek. Do any of the users of the park use this parking lot?
The city owns that parking lot, they charge you for it.
Parking deck, but there's no lot. It's all police. Police have that.
Oh, it's the police, but there's a garage right here.
You have to
There's the
pay for it,
garage.
so what the reference is free parking for people
Free
to
parking
come.
with their ass.
I see.
Park, not, there's always parking in Frederick. It's just they,
Yeah.
what you
would
gotta
like
pay
to have free parking to enjoy the park.
When Friends of Mullinix Park promotes an event, we say limited parking in the park, but there's ample parking in the, West Patrick Street, garage. But still, what other parks in the city do you have to pay to garage to go park when there are about 8, maybe 10 parking spaces in the park that aren't dedicated to the park?
That's a good point.
I'm not sure how you enforce that. People park there to go to court. They park there.
Yeah.
There's
They're public
residents that
parking
park
spaces.
there.
They're
I mean,
public
there's,
parking spaces.
it's, when it's not pool season, it's 2-hour parking.
Well, that's what
And that is, I've seen it enforced.
Okay.
But
that's
yeah,
still Mullinix Park property.
it still is. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
We'll put meters there and then give the money to Mullinix Park.
I think you had a question over here, or a comment?
Oh, yeah, just, again, resident hat. So I bring my daughter here, she goes to the pool with summer camp. That pool's always at capacity because it's so little. And there's kids that have to wait to get in. I noticed, my observation was that I feel like it's like limited in what kids can do. There's swings in a jungle gym. I don't know if you could add like one little climbing something where the swings are or something, just kind of looks bland. That's just my input, but again, maybe kids don't really use the park, but as a mom of a young kid, I know she loves. Oh, they do? Okay.
People use it.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah,
that park had a lot more.
I see it all the time.
Yeah, okay, cool. I wasn't sure, only my own experiences, but I feel like we took away a lot of like what the kids could do.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, that's true, that's
Yeah.
true, yes.
Okay. So yeah, more and more playground equipment.
Yeah,
That's
more
something
playground.
that's definitely a change we can make.
Because that was a magnet for the black community. Teenagers, good Lord, use that park. But now you said you go down there, take your child down there, I can see, there would be a problem with a child in that little pool. The pool is only 2 feet deep. I'm talking about the swimming pool.
Yeah.
I know you guys not able to talk about that tonight, yeah.
I wanted to second, I do think that, the playground does need more attention, because I think that when you lose areas like that for children, then parks are not frequented that much, so that's a good point.
Yeah.
And then, one other thing that I thought of, that was just a concern, and you could just let me know if you have a solution for this, but you said that you wanted to put the water, like the water embankment or wherever the water flows downhill, runoff water behind the bandstand. Would that be a cause for like mosquitoes or any issues like that?
No, so like those facilities are specifically designed to drain within 24 hours of a rainstorm. They basically just kind of slow down the water before it goes into the storm sewer. So that's, yeah, I understand the concern, but I wouldn't worry about that.
Okay, cool. That was my thank you.
And all the pavement we're seeing is just regular concrete pavement, it's not pervious or anything?
Yeah, this is regular concrete pavement. There's actually, we ran into some issues with the existing soils on site. There's a layer of karst soils which are impervious. So essentially, the water can't percolate very deep. So pervious pavement wouldn't really accomplish very much in terms of improving permeation. But it, you know, the way the math works out, it doesn't really fulfill the amount of stormwater that we need to manage. But
In fact, we have to put liners in the stormwater management facilities because of that issue. So, yeah, we don't create sinkholes, yeah.
Getting back to the children in the pool using the playground equipment in the park, there is a gate there. It's I think a wide gate, but it's an operational thing. You know, you can't let the kids out of the back gate to go out and play in the park and back unless it has somebody to man it or you know, it's an operational thing more than a physical thing, but it's something that maybe Bob could think about, of having a way to get out of the pool area, go over into the park and play a bit, come back without having to run all the way around and but come back in through the bathhouse.
You can't do it right now, they won't let you leave and go back
It's
in.
probably a health department issue. So.
Okay, all right.
Without paying again.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
I'm not saying that I agree with that, I'm just saying that's
Well,
how,
there's
that's
reasons for
what the
everything.
rule is now, I'm just sharing.
So I had one suggestion. We built the park down at Pointy Rocks, and it was somewhat meandering like this, and they had some like signs and stuff that discussed the history. So taking in what they were saying, maybe you could have like a little walk, you walk around and you get a sign here, and it discusses one part of the park, and you walk around a little further, and there's another sign it discusses. And it would provide some of the history.
yeah, like talking about the different parts of the park and how they were used and how they're being used now. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
There's a nonprofit called Arch that does a lot of like Frederick Black history, and they have a walking tour, and they could probably, with all the pathways, have little like a Black history walking tour built into the park. And I know that comes later, but if we had that designed.
Yeah, we can definitely have that conversation and see how we can incorporate that. I like that idea a lot.
It'd be great if it could be, it'd be great if it could be some like really fun ways to incorporate history. I've worked on something with Arch and, really, you know, like it was a bubblegum machine and what you got out was like a little, tour guide and.
Oh, that's fun.
Things that are on the concrete that you can interact with, and there was one where it was like the idea was like a sundial and your body was the, whatever, the timekeeping part.
The moment.
And then, and you get a different story for the different time of, like, I think there's really fun things you can do that would be, maybe not a playground, but it'd be play incorporated in like a tribute to the history. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, like something interactive as opposed to just something that you can read. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I like that.
There's only a certain population, I love those things, so I read them all. But there's only a certain set of us who read them all, and then there are other people who will play and get the information.
That's
out.
true. Yeah, I'm personally I'm a reader as well, so that's where my mind goes. But I do definitely like the idea of those more interactive things. Thank you for those suggestions.
And it was the Sons of Reawakening, our organization again, that, you know, we started those tours through the area. You know, it wasn't Arch, it was our organization.
I didn't know that.
With the benefit of a gentleman who, part of our goal is to have that road through the park renamed in honor of Daddy Duke. Daddy Duke lived where the circle is right now. He lived probably perpendicular to that circle. on the west side. He was a historian, the nephew of Maya Angelou. Well known in the community, well known. And we were proposing to have.
You know
it
what?
named-
I think I might have, when I was talking about Bill Lee, I think I might have been mixing up a little bit of the information that I had read with what you're saying about Daddy Duke. So I just wanted to apologize. I wanted to acknowledge and apologize for
Okay.
that. I think I mixed that up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, of course, anything that's written down, we'll definitely fact check. Yeah. Any other comments, questions?
When would there be a follow-up after you go back to drawing board
I'm not sure if we are scheduled. I don't.
Where we can give a definitive timeframe or date for that right now.
Okay.
We'll take this feedback, we'll, speak with Shayna and the mayor's office.
Okay. I always just think
Feedback's good, I mean, like I said, this is part of the process.
Yeah.
And I think what Malik was proposing, that a more comprehensive meeting, because tonight, we had asked the community to participate in this. I went to some friends of mine, early today, and they had ample time, but it didn't fit their schedule. The time wasn't right for them,
What a
you know.
weekend ever?
This is being recorded, and we're gonna have the presentation linked, but I did talk to them, we'll talk off the record about that as well. About a separate meeting.
Is there a way for people to provide feedback through the
Online feedback.
Facebook or whatever it is?
Set up an
Yeah,
online
we can
comment.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming today. Thanks for, some lively discussion, and some useful criticism and feedback. We appreciate it. So, yeah, I mean, well, I guess we just discussed next steps. So, we, hope we can provide you guys with a revised design, at some point in the coming weeks or months. So, thank you.